Not over.
There we go. All right. Did I knock it out of position? All right, good. Well, guys, as always, I have to thank you for being here. I mean, these things take a ton of time and effort, but I love doing them. And the whole thing is to help you understand there's so much more to wellness than chiropractic being your cornerstone. It's an important foundation, and you need a foundation to rebuild your house. But there's so much else that we can do to help you get better. Okay, so I love when people take initiative and want to go further than just lying on my table and getting their spines realigned. And that's very important. Don't take that wrong, but there's so much more. There's eat, move, and think, and movement comes under, chiropractic comes under, exercise is also under there. Think is how our daily thought processes, how we handle the mental stressors in today's, especially today's lifestyle, and how we eat is so important. And if you have a weakness in any of the three, it shows up where? Physically in your movement. And that's where over the 27 plus years now that I've been treating patients, people are getting sicker. It's really sad to see this. And yet there's more information, there's more exposure to the information, but what happens is people aren't getting the message. It's kind of like it's going in one ear and out the other. And I don't know if people are giving up. I don't know if they just become more complacent. But I don't have all the answers. But hopefully some of the answers are here, and we can expand upon you getting better. That's the whole idea, is I want to help you get better. And that's where the functional medicine, the functional neurology comes in. And there's so many things that help your package, and your package is wellness. Okay? So good. All right. Everybody had their pH testing completed. What our goal is, we're shooting for a pH basically 7.2 to 7.4. Okay? Probably that is the best number from what I'm finding. Okay? So we want it at least to be 7.2 to 7.4. So most people, when we test them out, are 5s and 6s. Which means what? The CSI, chronic systemic inflammation. I'm going to abbreviate it there. What does that actually mean? Okay? It means you're acidic. Your internal chemistry is acidic. When you're acidic for long periods of time, it wouldn't be an issue if it was a temporary thing. Okay, you bang your knee, the knee swells, you're going to have an inflammatory process. That's a good thing in a short-term situation. The problem is most of us are what? Chronically, systemically inflamed. So basically what happens is when we're acidic, we're rotting. And over time, you can also call it a degeneration. In the spine, it's called osteoarthritis, and we know why. Osteoarthritis is also subluxation degeneration. So if you're acidic, what's going to happen? You're going to be predisposed to what? Subluxation, because it's a stress on the body that's 24/7. If you're systemically inflamed, you're not going to hold your adjustments. So it's a vicious cycle here. So it's kind of like 2 steps forward and 1 back. And what's it come down to? A lot of our dietary, you're going to see it, a lot of it is linked to dietary issues. Okay? And always, like, it always comes back to diet. I go to the gym, and I've been in enough gyms over the years, and I would see these people in there over the years, and they would actually get worse. They would get heavier. They would get steadily, they would decline. And yet they're in there. Every time I'm in there, the same people are in there. And they're working hard. They're working very hard. But 2 things. One, a lot of people have this false feeling of security that, well, if I work out, I can eat anything I want. Well, that's not the case. Because here these people are in the gym, and I've watched them deteriorate over the years. And what's the big issue? They're working, their movement is good, period. Okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They're probably doing a pretty good job after all those years. Because they're consistent. That's the biggest thing with exercise, is one, to do it and be consistent with it. Can we agree on that? But what they're doing is, when they leave the gym and they're going home, what are they doing all day? They're eating poor quality foods. And a lot of times it's hidden. You think you're doing a real good job. But you're going to, as we talk today, you're going to learn how many things predispose us to this chronic systemic inflammation. And that's the problem, is because it doesn't stop. It's 24/7, 7 days a week. Okay, so for example, somebody works out, they go 3-4 days a week, they get their 20 to 30 minutes of cardio in, they do some weight training, maybe it winds up being 50 minutes to an hour. And they're not holding their adjustments and they're gaining weight. And then you look at their diet and they come home, and when I mean diet, please, at no time ever think that I mean calorie restriction. The only time I stress calorie restriction is when you do the detox programs, because when you squeeze a fat cell, it's kind of like a sponge. The fat cell accumulates most of your biotoxins, a lot of your organophosphates, your pesticide residuals. They all are stored in the fat cell. So what do we want to do? It's kind of get the sponge, like in the sink at home, and you want to do what? You want to squeeze it. And how do you squeeze a fat cell? You restrict its calories so it starts to purge what? The stored fat. Because most of the toxins in our bodies are stored in the fat cells, and fat cells are everywhere through the body. So that's the only time I want you to do a controlled caloric restriction, is to do what? Purge your body of the biotoxins that have accumulated over time. And most of them are from our air, our water, our foods. Okay? So when I say diet, let's always know, and I'll say this repeatedly, we're meaning proper foods eaten, not calorie restriction. It's kind of like fat has gotten this real bad name. But we need fats, because think about it. Every cell in our body has a cell wall. Otherwise, we'd just be one big puddle of chemical, right? Mostly water, some sugar and some fat, and we'd be like Jello. All right, but we have little cells that separate all through the body, trillions of them. Well, where am I going with this? What makes the cell wall of all cells? Cell membrane. What's it made of? It's a phospholipid barrier, or a lipid barrier, or a fancy word for fat. So we need fats. For example, our brain is basically fish oil jello, omega-3 fatty acids. Pretty good fat, wouldn't you say? All right, so fat has gotten this horrendously bad name. Well, why has it gotten that? Because we've been marketed, and you're going to hear me reference that. We've been marketed to think a lot of good foods are good for us, when in fact they are horribly bad. And most of the foods that we're going to touch on tonight, actually, we're going to tell you all the ones that cause systemic inflammation. And you're going to say, oh my God, I've been duped into thinking that it's a healthy food. Because we've been marketed. Because a lot of these foods are easy to produce, okay, and they're cheap, and they get the largest, quickest profit can be made off of them. So the sad reality is you've been marketed because of economics, not because it's healthy for you. And the food pyramids, and I included some food pyramids, all the way from like the 50s and the 60s through ones that say it's an anti-inflammation diet, to Paleolithic diet, to the one that I really like. And paleo is pretty close. I've just tweaked that one. So we're going to talk about all these, and we're going to go back over them with the knowledge you learn as we go into Module 2, and it looks like it's possibly going to be a third one. And you're going to laugh, but you're going to be mad at the same time. You're going to laugh how ridiculous these things are. And I'm going to show you a brand new one. They made a big deal of it. Revised food pyramid. And Christina will tell you this. I spent about 2 hours looking at all these pretty pictures of the food pyramids. And she'll tell you, I kept saying, oh my God, look at this, look at this crap, look at this junk, look at this junk, look at this junk. And that's what's out there. And the internet is loaded with them. And they're very pretty, they're all colorful and really done creatively, but They're all skewed. And you're going to look at them when I show you what it should be versus what you've been taught and most likely what you've been eating and probably 70 to 80% of your food. Okay? People who are chronically inflamed die of usually the 4 major diseases. What are they? If you look at it statistically, if you're chronically inflamed, you're predisposed to heart attack, cancer, stroke, and diabetes. If we took those 4 major diseases out, how many people would survive every year? How many people die a year of those big 4? You take those away, what's left? Infection, accidents. I mean, we all get old and eventually we all need to move on. But the problem is what? You don't see a lot of people beyond 80 years of life that have been chronically, systemically inflamed. I say 80's kind of long. No, not when science has told you it should be 142. Okay? I don't know about you guys, but I got the young kids. I want to stick around as long as I can. Plus, I've had a grandmother and great-grandmother that lived to 97 and 9 months, and within 24 hours of each other's lifespan. Someday I'm going to look that up and find out exactly how many hours. It's 24 hours or less. That blows my mind, and I really want to do that, and I swear I'm going to do it, and I will do it. But, I mean, and that's by accident. You know, could you imagine if they knew really what to do? But anyway, as long as I'm not a burden on my kids, I want to stick around as long as I can. All right, here we go. So we talked about the 4 majors. Because we said the degeneration aspect, we can take it a little bit further, okay? AD is Alzheimer's disease. It's also being called diabetes 3 now. We've all heard of diabetes 1. As a reminder, as a genetic problem, it's when the pancreas doesn't make enough insulin and you have high blood sugar. The most common is diabetes 2. It's always. How often? Always related to lifestyle. Eat, move, and think. Okay? So diabetes 2, you know, over the years, science community has said, well, it's a genetic thing. Well, it's not a genetic thing. It's this simple. You put a gene in a good environment, which means eat, move, and think well, good water, good air, good mental environment. Guess what? The gene will manifest in a good way. You put a weak gene in a poor environment, what's going to happen? It's going to manifest in a poor way. Okay? It's that simple. Genes get too much of the blame. Very few diseases are genetic. Huntington's chorea, horrible genetic disease. Okay? Trisomy 23, we know more commonly as what? Mental retardation. Those are Tay-Sachs, a genetic disease that's found in a Jewish community. Things like cystic fibrosis, all horrendously bad genetic diseases. Yes, there is genetic diseases, but they make up statistically less than 0.5%. So where's that take us back to? It's called lifestyle. Right? And every one of these classes, we're up to 33 modules, mind you. Right? That's our last count. Mm-hmm. And we talked about the eat, move, and think wellness classes. Where I want to go with this. That's our tree. That's the trunk. Okay? And some of us here have attended the dietary enemy class. Who was the dietary enemy? Was it fat? Sure. Most people think it's fat. Right? I bet you over 50% of the people will tell you it's fat. But now everybody in this room knows it's what? Sugar. Sugar is the enemy. So we're going to put sugar here. Okay? That's an S, not a 5. Alright? And then what we're doing here is we're starting to take the branches of the tree. Okay? This is a 6 to 7 hour classwork. And these I'm trying to keep to 50 to 60 minutes. Because statistically the old noodle loses concentration. We want you to be productive. Okay? All right, so as we add the branches, we're up to 33 now, with no end in sight, right, Christina?
Yep.
All right. Okay, what causes the chronic systemic inflammation? There's your dietary enemy again. You're going to see how these things all interconnect. Okay, the branches all come back to the trunk, right? Decrease exercise. Statistically, if you're not moving it, you're inflamed. That's simple. Poor food choices. We're going to spend a lot of time on poor food choices. And what do you got? We got this chronic thing called what? Mental stress.
Marriage.
Yeah, you can put marriage under there. I'm with you there, Frank. Okay? Frank wants to put marriage under here. Just a big N. Marriage and mental go together. Right? Take some notes down, Christina. Alright, so I think this is a nice intro. I think no one in this room tested out higher than 6 tonight. We don't have to name names, but there's an issue. Okay? What I want to also talk to you about is some additional blood works. I know some of you are scheduled to get blood works, some of you may need to get blood works, but what we want to do is get these numbers soon. There's a couple, please write these down. You want to get homocysteine. It's not easy writing upside down. Does anybody see that? Homocysteine. S-T-E-I-N-E. Please write that down. And your doctor's going to say, like mine did last Saturday, because I can't write my own prescriptions, and I can't eat my own labs, and neither can she. So we have to trade off. So, what am I saying? She goes, what do you want that for? Because I need a diagnosis, I need a reason, otherwise they're going to reject payment. This is the #1 marker or indicator of cardiovascular disease. No one orders it, except functional medicine physicians, because we're into optimal health and optimal blood works, not the ranges that you get from your typical blood work. What do I mean by that? You need to know this. When you go to a lab, let's say it's in Northeast Philly, and that lab is LabCorp or one of these big chains, right? What they do is the values, the range is based upon the average of the people that have presented, usually for the year prior. Well, I don't want my health based upon the majority. I want my health values, my blood values, based upon optimal human performance. It's a much tighter range, and it's a much more in-depth, specific testing. Okay? For example, there are 11 markers with your thyroid. The typical thyroid profile is 3. Well, if there's 11 markers, that leaves you how many short? 8 short. Right? That's only basically what? 3 out of 11 is 1/4 of what we can find out about you. Correct? Let's just round things up. So we have a calculator. But you see my point. Well, you know, I'll show you a book out there. I'm going to grab it real quick. And this is important because it came up. Why do I still have thyroid symptoms when my lab tests are normal? Well, you only tested 3 out of 11. Do I need to go any further? Look what the title says. It tells you exactly what the heck's going on. This is based on a functional medicine, functional chiropractic neurologist. Okay? He's gotten awesome results. But this is the kind of stuff I want you to understand. Okay? So we want to get what? Homocysteine. Why? And you're going to say, write the reason why. Doc, I want to check. There's a history in my family, if it is, you don't lie, of cardiovascular disease, which most people have in their history. And if you're not sure what that is, that means stroke, heart attack, any kind of heart issues over the years, congestive heart failure,